Welcome to Heidi Relationships. Today, we'll read some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, I would really appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. That would help the channel a lot. Thank you very much in advance.
The first one is titled, "My wife tries to humiliate me when I work." While under normal circumstances I would try to communicate my feelings to my wife, I am at my wit's end for how to handle this situation, as I have exhausted all of the typical conflict resolution means. Being a teacher, I am currently giving lessons over Zoom. I recognize that studying math over Zoom isn't the most exciting thing in the world for students, and I can barely get them to even pretend to be interested in my lessons when we're in the classroom, but they have done an admirable job of staying focused. My wife is making it extremely difficult on my end, though. Several months ago, when my lessons began, I went from working long hours to being at home all day. Unfortunately, my wife does not seem to understand that while I am at home, and while I can occasionally help out with a chore or two, I still have actual work to do. Between lesson prep, grading, and meetings, my schedule is quite full. The first time she interrupted my lesson, she abruptly opened the door to the room where I was teaching and loudly asked me to do the dishes. This was unbelievably awkward as I was in the middle of teaching 36 10th graders geometry. I told her we would talk about it later, but not being deterred, she asked if that was a yes or a no. I said it was a yes, but that I was in the middle of a lesson. Without a word she closed the door. I got some chuckles from the students, but a bit of red-cheeked embarrassment was the extent of the damage. The next time, 2 days later, she again barged in holding a pair of my pants that I left on the floor of our bedroom. She loudly stated, "You need to pick up after yourself." This time, before responding, I muted my mic and turned off my camera telling her that I was in the middle of a lesson. Again, she walked away without a word. At this point I moved my setup into the basement of our house so I could avoid further interruption. Since my basement looks like it probably has a few dead bodies buried in it, my students have begun to call me Basement Dad, which is endearing, but I would rather teach in a room where I'm not going to get asbestos in my lungs. The trouble really began when I started locking the door to prevent interruptions. My wife will begin by rattling the door a few times, followed by pounding on it. Then she'll groan loudly and say something negative about me. After that I can hear her walking around the house slamming doors. A few weeks ago, she was literally jumping up and down, stomping her feet, in the room above mine. In the first months of these online lessons, I set up a hotkey to mute my mic and disable my camera instantly when needed, and luckily my reflexes honed from Counter-Strike in my teens has paid off. But there have been times where she has sneaked in an embarrassing moment for me. Every time I have patiently explained to her that I need complete quiet to teach my lessons, and she says, "Yeah, okay." Then in the next lesson, without fail, she'll find something new to complain about and throw a tantrum, trying to humiliate me in front of my students. While my mute game is on point, students have recognized something is wrong. One of my 9th graders even sent me an email asking if everything was okay. I had to make up a lame excuse about needing to mute my mic because of a sudden grinding noise that happens in my old basement. There's no way she bought that. Since I'm unable to go out, unable to even enter the school grounds, and have no place to go to avoid my wife, I'm unbelievably anxious when I teach. I have tried talking to her calmly, and I even tried to get angry at her. When I yelled at her for forcefully sliding plastic files under the door, so they'd float down in the background during my lessons, she expected me to apologize for getting angry at her. How can I even approach this kind of problem? A user in the comments said, "Tell her that unless she wants to go out and get a job to support the family she needs to cut the childish crap and let you do your job uninterrupted. If she still keeps acting like a 2-year-old, tell her she quits immediately, or you will leave to stay with family or in a hotel so that you can work." Another user said, "If this is not pre-baby type behavior for her, really take a good look into postpartum depression. Also, reach out to her OB. 8 months falls squarely within the window and I'm sure COVID isn't helping. She isn't well, get her the help she needs." The next one is titled, "Update, my wife tries to humiliate me when I work. My first lesson after making that post, my wife went straight back to her old antics. I was in the lesson room as students gradually joined, talking to a student who was interested in luxury cars. At some point during the conversation, I said, "Yeah, I think I'd have to go with the Lamborghini there." I heard from behind the door in the basement where I was teaching, "Lamborghini," in the sarcastic exaggerated tone of voice that kids will use to mock you. I realized she was being childish again, but figured she'd eventually tire herself out. A few minutes after the lesson started, I used the word, circumference, to describe a word problem. I then heard, circumference, from behind the door at the top of the stairs, followed by giggling. Since the timing was right, as I was about to have the students take a shot at a problem, I set them to the task, muted my mic, disabled my camera, and quietly crept up the stairs. I suddenly opened the door to find my wife with a cup over her ear pushed against the door so she could hear me. I shouted at her for her behavior for about a minute. I asked if she was 5 years old and what the hell was wrong with her. She feigned fear and shock as if I had held her against the wall with my hands wrapped around her throat, which made me just sigh and go back downstairs to finish my lesson. For the rest of the lesson, she was quiet, but after it I went upstairs to bring up what she did. She started asking if I was going to yell at her again. I responded that I wouldn't, and I tried to get back on topic, but no matter what I said about her behavior, her response was the same. When I brought up her stomping in the room above before, "Are you going to yell at me again?" When I brought up her sliding plastic files under the door during a lesson before, "Oh, are you going to yell at me again?" When I brought up anything she has done during lessons, the answer was the same, over and over again. There is absolutely no way to broach the topic with her now. I called her doctor and said that her behavior is erratic, and that she might have PPD. The doctor said that he could ask about it when she came in, but there is not much else he could do. The next day I tried to sit my wife down for a calm discussion about the possibility of her having PPD, to which she responded she had PTSD from my abusive shouting. Right. When I suggested therapy, together, she said, "Oh, to fix your anger management problems. Sounds good." I teach in my car in front of a Starbucks now. Outside of lesson time we haven't really had any issues, and now that I'm outside the house teaching, we are strained but stable. I know this is not a very satisfactory outcome, but I think she has deep underlying issues that are going to need professional intervention. When I said I would happily go to therapy with her to find a solution to our communication issues, she told me that I should go alone. I think that may actually be a good step because having a neutral party to listen to my worries and guide me towards better de-escalation tactics would be highly beneficial. I could also try to entice her to join gradually. Final update. I convinced her to go to therapy with me together. It took a lot of convincing. I feel like the situation is improving, but I won't update any further here due to the way this blew up and confronted me with too much publicity. Thanks everybody. The next one is titled, "My husband will only eat kitty food, and it's ruining our marriage." My husband will only eat chicken nuggets, grilled cheese, and SpaghettiOs. That's it. When we go over to friends' places he'll actually bring some SpaghettiOs to heat up in their microwave instead of eating anything else, even if our friends cooked a wonderful meal. If we go out somewhere to eat he will only order chicken nuggets off the kids' menu. If they don't have them, he just won't eat. If I try to cook literally anything except one of his 3 food groups, he will claim he's allergic to some random ingredient instead of just outright saying he doesn't want to eat it. He'll then try to guilt me for forgetting his allergy. Spoiler. We've been to the doctor and he's not allergic to anything. My husband just turned 36 this month. His food habits were sort of cute, acceptable when we were both in college and eating like trash, but now I'm genuinely worried about his health. I also find myself avoiding any sort of dining situations with our friends, which is so much harder than it sounds. I've tried talking to him about his eating habits and just he brushes me off. Since I don't cook his meals, the only victory I've had in this situation, he doesn't think I have the right to dictate what he can and can't eat. I'm not his mother. I'm his wife. But I just want my husband, the man I love, to be healthy. What do I do? Edit. We met when I was 19, in my sophomore year of college. We got married after graduation and moved in together shortly after. I didn't realize how strict his diet was until after we were married. Edit. Thank you for your comments and suggestions. There are so many wonderful comments that it'd take me all day to make it through, so I'll try to address them here and then post an update tonight. It does sound like ARFID, and I agree that we need counseling. There's a good counseling center nearby that I found last night that offers couples therapy. I want to try them first. I'm going to bring it up to him tonight and really try to explain how much this issue bothers me, and how at the very least we should discuss this with a counselor to find a place where we're both happy. A user in the comments said, "OMG, I went through this. I kept pushing. I just kept trying to introduce foods to him. After some searching we found a starting point. He was on board after I showed him I was doing this in his best interest, and we built up from there. Things accelerated after he got some blood work done and it showed that his 80% lifestyle of fast food was going to kill him early. We're eating better now." Another user said, "I knew a couple like this. They stayed together until the kids moved out and then they separated. He would only eat sausages, pizza, potatoes and pasta, and he passed on his weird eating habits to one of his children, who is far stricter about her eating than he is and basically gave herself Crohn's disease. The wife is a fabulous cook, but he would always make a different meal for himself. He doesn't go to restaurants that aren't Italian or just in general low quality. He doesn't get out much, he gets irritable at dinner tables, he's got a weird relationship with food. He's absolutely set in his ways, there's no changing him. So, he doesn't get invited out often, and he's divorced and living alone with a cat. I suppose you could try to bring up that you're worried about his health. But it sounds like it's going to be hugely difficult to change him if he's not wanting to change himself. Unhealthy food relationships are really difficult to deal with from an outsider perspective. Maybe get yourself some therapy to help you deal with it? He's also over a decade older than you, and your life is too short to be trying to run around after a guy, trying to fight him to change his ways so he doesn't give himself diabetes or something equally awful, get obese, and basically die early. There's got to be an ultimatum somewhere here." The next one is titled, "Update to the Picky Husband Story." So, I did it. I confronted him when he came home. I brought up ARFID, which he seemed very open to. He seemed sort of relieved that it's a fairly common disorder. Some of you absolutely called it. He explained that he was extremely embarrassed and defensive when I had tried bringing the issue up with him before. When I explained how much it hurt when he shut me down, he seemed genuinely surprised. He had no idea this issue was so important to me. I'll admit, I did cry a bit as I told him how worried I am about him eating himself into an early grave. His foods are not healthy, and by the end of our conversation we both agreed to work together to overcome this. We'll be going to couples therapy this weekend at a local clinic. From there we'll look into seeing a dietitian and a specialized counselor for his eating disorder. However, I called his mother while he was at work. I asked her about his eating habits as a kid, if there were any foods he sort of liked or anything he was really averse to. I like the idea of making weekly meal prep together, so there's no surprises and we can collaborate on slowly introducing new foods. I was hoping this conversation would give me a good starting point when I talked with him. His mother is a very sweet woman and told me all the foods he even sort of would eat, and everything he refused to. But she offhand mentioned that he has sensory processing issues due to his autism. I asked her to elaborate, and she did. It turns out he was diagnosed with autism as a kid. He even went to an after-school physical therapist for many years to deal with sensory issues. He never told me any of this. When I spoke with him I didn't know how to bring it up, so I just didn't. I'm so worried he'll deny it, or he'll get angry with me for speaking to his mother behind his back, since he obviously doesn't want me to know. I want to stress that I never brought up autism with his mother. She mentioned it all on her own. I feel lied to and manipulated. I don't know how to bring it up with him, because right now I'm just starting to process it. I'm angry that he never told me. His food issues are one thing, but not telling me about his autism, and seemingly intentionally keeping it from me, as he didn't bother to mention it today either, is another. It's more and more obvious that the man I married isn't who I think he is and has been lying to me for years. Right now, I'm telling myself to wait until counseling this weekend before confronting him. I don't want our conversation to be out of anger, but I also don't know how I could ever trust him again if he was so willing to keep such a big secret from me. Edit. I will be bringing this up in counseling, but I'm not going to discuss it with him until then, as I don't want to let my anger and hurt override my desire to help him. As some people stated, it is possible he doesn't know about his autism. I really hope that is the case. I'm hurt not because he has autism. I really couldn't care less. It doesn't change who he is as a person, but rather that he never told me about it. The next one is titled, Final Update to the Picky Husband Story. I confronted him about my conversation with his mother the night before our counseling appointment. I made sure to bring it up casually, so I didn't become angry again. He tried to brush me off at first, saying he didn't know what I was talking about. After talking for a bit, he eventually confessed that he not only knew of the diagnosis but deliberately kept it from me. He said I was his dream, and he didn't want to do anything to ruin our perfect relationship. I explained how him keeping this from me hurt me. I explained how I could have been there to support him instead of feeling like he needed to hide. He said he wasn't ashamed of it at all. He explained that it's just not something that affects him anymore. I, again, explained how it affects me, but he didn't seem to care. I didn't show him the post I made, but I used some of the advice from you all to try to explain why his autism really does in fact still affect his life. We went to bed upset. The next day he acted like nothing happened. We ate breakfast, he had chicken nuggets, and went about our day. I kept expecting him to bring it up, but he never did. I didn't have the nerve to bring it up again until later at the marriage counselor's office. I spoke to the counselor so as not to seem accusing and explained that this was an issue that bothered me. My husband actually laughed and said he assumed I'd gotten over it by now. When I explained that no, I really hadn't, he got angry with me and stormed out. The counselor tried to mediate, but it wasn't much use as my husband went to wait in the car. I was worried he'd leave without me, so I cut the meeting short. Our ride home was quiet. It wasn't until we got home that I said I was worried he was keeping other things from me too. He said he'd been reading online about how women can't understand autism and therefore he didn't think it was important to tell me about it. I said that was the weakest excuse I'd ever heard. He then said that I'd leave him if I knew. I said if I left him it'd be because he's a liar. Apparently he told all of our mutual friends that he'd just been diagnosed with autism, and I was considering leaving him because of it. Now many of our friends won't talk to me and act very cold when we run into each other in public. I don't know what else he's told them, but I think he told someone I cheated on him as a fake account has been commenting horrible things about me and my supposed sexual habits on all of my Instagram posts. I keep reporting them, but then it seems like another just pops up in its place. I haven't decided if divorce is the right path. I know he's been browsing Incel and other bitter male-centric websites. One of his friends is a self-described incel, so I'm even more convinced that this isn't the man I married. I'm mostly just confused. I've been avoiding him at home, and it feels like more of a roommate situation at this point. He doesn't really leave his den until it's time for work, and then he's back in the den until bed. It seems like everything is messed up, just from me wanting to help. I don't even know what to expect at this point, much less how to move on from here. There are so many more comments than I anticipated. I'm trying to at least read through most of them, although I think I'm past my emotional ability to reply. I'm really shocked at how overwhelmingly supportive people are being. Thank you. I'm going to be discussing divorce with a lawyer. I don't know how to bring it up with him, but I'm past the point of caring. You're all right. I dread coming home to him in the evenings. I dread if he will miraculously want to talk. This isn't healthy for either of us. At the very least some time apart would be good. That's all for now. I don't think I'll update past this, as I'm already uncomfortable with how quickly this blew up. But I will be living elsewhere by the end of the month. This is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the relationship stories. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video and write a comment. I really appreciate your support and it helps my channel so much. Thank you.